Pierce Brosnan dives into action for the first time as James Bond in the explosive 1995 film Goldeneye. Watch us struggle to differentiate between Bond, Austin Powers, and every other spy movie that ever existed. Extra bonus, we'll be testing our guest Nick's patience with our shenanigans. So fasten your seatbelts because this episode is going to be shaken and stirred.
To the No More Late Fees podcast. I'm Danielle.
And I'm Jackie. And we're just two best friends and ex-Blockbuster employees rewatching some of the best and worst movies from the late 90s and early 2000s. This week, we are talking about the 1995 James Bond spy classic, Goldeneye. But before we dive in, let's get into some housekeeping. If you love the podcast and you want to support us, here are a few ways that you can.
Did you know writing a review and or rating us helps us get more listeners? If you want to be featured and help us grow, head to Apple, Spotify, Podchasers, or your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review.
And if you like what you hear and want to buy us a virtual cup of coffee, head on over to ko-fi.com/no-more-late-fees.
Love nostalgic merch? Check out our Amazon store for some fun movie-themed products, including the movies we cover, t-shirts, bags, and more. Just head to amazon.com/shop/no-more-late-fees-podcast.
And we're not alone. Joining us this week is returning guest and my childhood friend, as well as the most patient man in the world, Nick. Hello.
Hello. It's good to be back.
We're so glad you're back and that you do have so much patience.
You just keep coming back for more, which I love.
Just watching James Bond movies over and over. It's like they are what they are, and I love them, and I just keep coming back. So it's kind of like it's this. It's you are who you are, and I love it, and I'll just keep coming back. It's so good to be here, and I'm so glad I'm your friend. Thank you for everything. This is so good.
If you want to get to know Nick a little bit better, make sure you come back later this week as we rank our top movie spies on our bonus episode. Or you can also check out our other episodes with Nick, including Clerks and Monsters, Inc. We'll link those episodes along with his other bonus episodes in our show notes. Jackie, let's get into Goldeneye.
I'm glad there's a synopsis here because I couldn't tell you what this movie is about other than Bond doing Bondy things.
Oh, it's not even that complicated. Oh, for crying.
And Russians and computers and satellites.
I know there was a lot of squeezing of the rib cage from an unchained hyena.
And some really cliche 90s hacker shit. Like just
yes.
like I'm in the main frame. Like
so when a powerful satellite system falls into the hands of Alec Trevelyan, aka Agent 006, a former ally turned enemy, only James Bond can save the world from an awesome space weapon that, in one short pulse, could destroy the Earth. As Bond squares off against his former compatriot, he also battles Trevelyan's stunning ally, Xenia Onatopp, an assassin who uses pleasure as her ultimate weapon.
It's something.
I hated it so much. Okay. Starring Pierce Brosnan, Sean Bean, Isabel Famke Janssen, Judi Dench, Ellen Cumming, and Joe Don Baker. It was directed by Martin Campbell. It was written by Ian Fleming, Michael Franz, and Jeffrey Kane. And you can currently watch it by renting it on Apple, Google Play, and YouTube for $3.99. But before we start, let's get into our ratings rewinds.
So you know the drill. Before we get into the movie, we'll reveal the rating our Y2K versions of ourselves would give. Then at the end, we'll see if our current selves agree with our initial rating. Our scale consists of would buy it again.
The best, would play on repeat.
5-day rental.
Would watch again.
2-day rental.
Okay, but nothing to write home about.
And same-day rental.
Trash. Straight up trash. I was trying to think of something clever to say, and all I could think of was I am an invincible, which did not fit. So
All right.
Nick,
Definitely would buy it again. As a matter of fact, when I watched it, I just pulled the DVD off of my shelf because yeah, I think this came out when I was like 12 years old, or like when I first saw it. I don't think I saw it like in theaters, but I think I probably went down to Blockbuster to rent it with my family. This kicked off my love of James Bond, and I think from here, like I have 3 box sets of DVDs that covered I have every single James Bond movie on DVD from Sean Connery all the way to Pierce Brosnan, and this was the one that kind of like kicked that off for me. So definitely like Y2K me would buy it again.
Nice. Jackie?
I've never seen this.
Same girl, same.
We're
Never
in for
seen
a
it.
ride.
I got real excited because I was like, oh, this is the one I did see with Michelle Yeoh, and I'm super psyched. And it wasn't. It was not. I was not watching a Michelle Yeoh movie.
I was excited because I've always told Nick I would give James Bond a chance. And so I tried really hard. And I do really enjoy Pierce Brosnan, and I
Same.
love him in After the Sunset, which is like a heist movie. And so I'm like, okay, I'll get like kind of the same ish, like charming, gonna like break in, do some shit. Yeah.
After
And then
the
that
Sunset.
quickly devolved with some
I've never
Hayek.
seen. Oh yes, I've never seen that one. I always think of Thomas Crown Affair.
Yes.
He's not a spy, he's a thief, but I love that one.
Yeah.
He just has so much charisma,
He's
but
precious.
it
It's
couldn't
tough.
save it for me.
Yeah, it's tough this being your first James Bond, because like this is definitely easily, without a doubt, the best of the Pierce Brosnan James Bonds.
Oh, it's only
Mhm.
downhill from
But
here.
yeah, but even still, like this being the best James Bond, like I was using, because I watched a lot of them in the lead up to this. At first, I started trying to watch them in chronological order, but
Mhm.
then like the Sean Connerys get real bad real fast, and then they all start to kind of blend together. I'm like, I can't do that anymore. Okay, abandon that plan. So then what I did was I went to like Metacritic and like went in or like ranked order from best to worst on Metacritic. And some of them I had seen before, but I was like, let me just make sure I work my way down. And even on Metacritic, Goldeneye is number 9 out of all like 27 James Bond. So it's like not great in the whole pantheon of James Bond films. It's pretty mid as far as James Bonds go. So it's like, I really wish this wasn't the first one you'd watched. There are better James Bonds out there.
Well, for me, and it's more Jackie because I've seen other ones. Now, if I remember them, I think I've seen a good majority of the Daniel Craig one, and I saw the Michelle Yeoh one. Okay, box office budget for this movie was $60 million. It made $356.4 million worldwide, which that's a lot of moolah.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting. So this movie came out in 95. I think they started in 94 with having Pierce come on was like a transition from the last Timothy Dalton movie. And it was caught up in litigation for 6 years. They had to hide. During those 6 years, I think this movie originally was supposed to come out in 1990. That's how crazy it was. And they were talking to Timothy, and at first he was like, I don't know if I want to come back. He kept on going back and forth. And at some point he was like, you know what, I will come back because I just want to have a last go at it. But because now we've had this 6-year hiatus, the producers were like, okay, you can come back, but you have to sign a deal that you would do it for like at least 3 more. You can't just like come for this one off and then go, which I think is stupid. Like, who would have cared if he did one more and then they switched it? Like, it was whatever. Because at that point, the last movie, that was like the end of his deal. So I think actually it was an expiration in time as well. And so he was just like, I'm not trying to do it. So again, back and forth. And the funny thing is, it's the longest gap between Bond movies since the series had started in 1962. There was a big gap between Spectre and No Time to Die that tied that time. And that was because obviously we had COVID. So this is the most successful James Bond movie since Moonraker, those names, and the first James Bond to be released on DVD. So
I watched it on DVD. I've been trying my best if I can get my hands on it. I'm watching it in its original format.
Nice.
It's fun watching the I don't know, these early runs of DVD production, and like when the menu comes up and it's like, I remember thinking that it was a big deal, like the menu's interactive, like, oh
Right.
neat.
Or finding secret, like the secret scenes and stuff like that.
Yeah, the things I took for granted. Yeah, when that Goldeneye menu came up for me, I was like, oh, here we go.
Gotta crack the
It's
vault.
so simple. It's just like a thing with like 4 little options. I'm like, yeah, let's go.
What were the trailers on this one? Do you guys know?
It went straight to a menu.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
Yeah.
They didn't have it in like as like one of the features, because sometimes they'll just have okay. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, before we get into the casting, let's hear a word from our podcast.
Hello, I'm a sophisticate, and so can you.
Is the name of our podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Anthony.
And I'm another of your hosts, Sydney,
And we're 2 queer millennials with ADHD.
who have been lying about our own cultural literacy.
If you've ever been in a situation where you pretended to know more than you do about an important movie or a piece of literature,
Yeah, or like a super cool band.
then this is the show for you.
This is a show where we engage with the canon so that you don't have to.
Topics for discussion will include such things as,
Is Carrie Brownstein the coolest person?
can anyone who likes the movie Chinatown be trusted?
Why, Tom Waits, why?
All of these questions and more will be answered on every episode of I'm a Sophisticate and So Can You.
Available wherever you find your podcast.
All right. So we talked about replacing Dalton, and what was also interesting is that Pierce Brosnan couldn't get out of his contract because he was on that show Remington Steele. So Dalton ended up coming on. It was before Dalton took the role. So Pierce Brosnan is who they originally thought of before Dalton. So it's almost like he was meant to have this role. He thought like the ship had sailed at this point, but then he got a chance.
So apparently at certain points, Mel Gibson, Hugh Grant, and Liam Neeson were offered the role and passed. Liam Neeson stating that he said his then fiancee, Natasha Richardson, wouldn't marry him if he accepted the role. I also read somewhere that he said he didn't want to do an action movie, which is funny because he later stars in Taken. And I was just like, oh, we were just saving it for later.
I think he just chose love over Bond, and that is the best.
It's funny that you say later. He chose like 25 years later,
Yeah.
like so much later. Like, wow, that's wild. And I was looking at this and I heard that Hugh Grant.
Never.
He's
No.
too goofy.
He
Yeah.
has, I think he has the charisma in a different way, but
Yeah.
there's just no way. And I'm
He's
glad he
like-
knew that I'm not doing that.
Yeah, it's like puppy dog charisma. It's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
like debonair.
It's period piece situation. Like he does well in a period piece, I think.
Which is like, now that I'm thinking about it, like I watched like a little bit of the Roger Moore James Bond, like he's in Moonraker and a couple of the others. And Hugh Grant, like basically there's a stretch of Bonds, like Roger Moore is one where there's just not a lot of action. Like there's no explosions and jumping out of airplanes and stuff like that. He's very, very schmoozy and very, just kind of charming debonair spy guy that's just interacting with other spy guys. Like I think like if Hugh Grant was in it, it would have been a very different type of Bond. I would not have liked that as much.
Agreed. I think now we're so committed to this action, like over the top action Bond. I don't even know if they can go back to the old ways. Ralph Fiennes was also considered, but I find it funny that he did eventually come back to the series. Now he's M. So in the newer ones.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And speaking of M, this was the first appearance of as Judi Dench cast as M. And apparently there was some pushback when they found out the collective, they found out that a female was going to be M until they experienced Judi Dench as M, and then everyone quickly shut up.
Right. She's great as M.
Oh, she's
awesome.
so good.
And it like apparently this came about because, well, it was inspired by Stella Remington, who was the head of MI5. Yeah, MI5 I think it happened in 92. So real life, our life imitate or art imitating life, essentially. But she does a really good job. That scene where she like pretty much calls Bond out on his just misogyny and being an asshole. I love that.
Yeah.
She was great.
So a lot of changes. There's a 6-year gap between this one and the last one. And so with those changes, this was the only Bond movie where Bond, M, and Moneypenny were all recast. The only holdover is, and he's been around, he was in like a dozen of these, was Desmond Llewellyn as Q. But yeah, brand new Bond, a brand new M, and a brand new Moneypenny in this one.
I just felt
Is Moneypenny? Is she like the secretary?
yes, essentially,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I always felt, I was thinking when I saw Desmond like or Q, it's dangerous for this elderly man to be in here. No, just saying.
That's his job, though. It's what he does. Day in, day out.
I had to look up who Paul McGann was, but apparently this poor man was on the hook thinking that he potentially, like, if Brosnan had turned it down, he would have been the choice. And when I looked him up, like, I knew who he was, but I was like, nah, man, that wasn't gonna be it. I was like, how is this number 2? Like, I would say Daniel Craig is probably the only Bond that I'm not physically attracted to. The rest of them can all get it. Even Sean Connery's racist ass. All of them. Even Roger Moore. They all could get it, but not Daniel Craig. Except when he was wearing that fitted white tank top in that commercial dancing around. I was like, okay, I see what Rachel Weisz is seeing. I get it. But as Bond, that's not my thing. Just saying.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just like, we have different tastes in men, apparently, Danielle. Daniel Craig can get it. Like, yeah, his whole physique and his whole look and demeanor. Maybe I'm more, I don't know, his Knives Out persona than.
Yes, I'm just meaning as James Bond. It didn't do it for me. But I do love Paul McGann because he's a part of the Doctor Who world. Yes. But James Bond, no. I don't see it. Also, could you imagine any James Bond movie being directed by John Woo?
No, thank you. No.
They offered it to him and he turned it down. He said he was honored by the offer. Like, I can't see a bomb with James Bond and then doves flying. It just is not working for me.
Yeah, that's just, like, speaking of it evolves and changes. Like, Bond should kind of move with the times, but John Woo.
That's a big change.
That's a big change.
The end fight sequence would have been much different than just running around and stomping on hands on a ladder.
I can't wait till we get into that.
This movie would have been like 2.5 hours long at least. Like,
it was so weird seeing Sean Bean in his younger years again, or not, like in Lord of the Rings. Like Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings for me. And another fucking movie, this man dies.
He dies all the time. It's what he does best.
Poor Sean Bean. He came on the screen and Ken's like, fucking Sean Bean in this movie. I'm like, spoiler alert. He's supposed to be 006. I didn't know he's going to be a double agent.
Oh, Nick, I have this question.
Okay.
In the James Bond world, am I, as the viewer, supposed to believe that these different iterations of James Bond are like the same character? Or is it that each generation, like, they assign 007 to a new, and that's like their name?
That is, I think, a debatable question. I think the idea that 007 and I think, okay, as far as I know, the name James Bond is supposed to be consistent. Like, it's supposed to be the same character doing 30 different spy missions. The number 007 changes with the person. So when James Bond retires, a new person will be 007. So I think we are supposed to believe that all 5 of these different actors across these 27 movies are all the same character. They are all the same person doing all kinds of different spy shit.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Trying to wrap my brain around that.
The other thing is that it wasn't until Daniel Craig that they even attempted to make any kind of chronology. Like all the other ones are just kind of scattershot one off, just like, yeah, we know James Bond, he's doing this now, and there's not any kind of timeline order that watch them
or
in.
like reference back to a previous mission or
I think they
anything.
should have stuck to that. They should have just stuck to it being so that they don't have to explain shit later. Now they have to be committed to this chronological situation.
There's
Yeah,
canon now.
Yeah, the Daniel Craig one kind of sets an arc, and it's like there's a beginning and an end. And I guess the theory is that in this arc that Daniel Craig has built, all the other like 22 movies that are not Daniel Craig are like underneath this umbrella that Daniel Craig built. I guess that would be the argument. I don't know how much I buy it, but that's the argument that the producers would give to you, Danielle. Everything is happening inside this umbrella story arc that the Daniel Craig movies have created.
The actresses considered as Bond girls were Elizabeth Hurley. I could have totally seen her in this role. And Elle Macpherson, Paulina Poroskova, and Eva were offered the role of Natalia, but turned it down.
Really disappointed to read that none of these actors are Russian, which actually now makes me really sad because I think this Bond is trying to do a lot to get past some of the old misogyny and the old sexism and the racism, and it doesn't quite get there. It doesn't quite do enough. And seeing that none of the Russian characters or the Soviet characters, none of those are actually played by Russian actors, it's kind of like, man, we could have done a little better. We could have.
Yeah.
To the defense, like, I mean, I'm sure there's a ton of Russian actors all around the world that they could have found. I guess it like the math of it, I didn't realize how not far away the fall of the Soviet Union was. And so this was right after the fall of the Soviet Union. This was the first time that they can actually film in Russia. It was a lot of changes happening because of even the storyline, because I think most of the Bond storylines had to do with the Cold War previously. So this was like, okay, we've got to shift a little bit with story, like how we're telling these stories. So maybe that's why they didn't have as many Russian actors. Who knows? But disappointing as well. Yeah. Alan Cumming as Boris. I love my boy. And he can do an accent because Nightcrawler in X-Men, he does a really good one, in my opinion. I don't know if it's accurate.
Yeah, and Robbie Coltrane, of course, is also a wonderful actor and does a really good. But then, like, it kind of brings to mind, like, are these really great Russian accents, or is this just me as an American viewer? Like, this is what I think of a Russian accent, because all I've ever heard are, like, you know, Western actors doing Russian accents. So I don't know. Like, yeah, they're great, but I'm like, could we have gotten an actual Russian to help us out here, please?
Right?
Yeah, that's true. My personal favorite scene, if you can, I'm not sure how cut off she is behind me, but Minnie Driver is in this movie, and it was a surprise as I'm watching it, and like, that's my boo. She earned $5,000 for her role as an inept singer who's performed Stand By Your Man in Robbie Coltrane's club. Funny enough, Driver is an amazing singer, but she did not provide the singing voice for this role. It was actually given to a singer named Michelle Aldridge. So it's like, missed opportunity. Why not let the girls sing? That wouldn't have been easier. I don't know. Maybe there's royalties or something in it.
So we start with the longest fucking bungee jump I've ever witnessed in my life. And at first I'm like, is that the Hoover Dam? Do I know where we are? No, we're somewhere in Russia. James is
Contra Dam in Switzerland.
But we're supposed to be in Russia.
I know,
right?
but it was filmed at the Contra Dam in Switzerland.
Okay. I was just confirming that I was in the right place.
Yeah, you are. You're right.
And then it's like he jumps very far, and then he has like this grappling hook gun that he shoots into the side of the wall, and then it like winds him to pull him closer to the wall. And then I'm just like, he just strapped that bungee cord to like a railing at the top of the dam. Wouldn't he have just like, there was no cantilever to hold him out from the wall. Wouldn't he have just jumped and immediately smacked against the wall at some point?
Jackie?
Like, the physics were not physicking at this point in the movie.
I will say this. I know what you're gonna say, Nick. We just need to pretend it's not real. That I didn't fucking care. I was like, I didn't even think I watched the whole bungee thing. I think I fast forwarded and said, "What's next?"
Oh Lord.
I watched the whole thing.
There's, if you watch more than one Bond movie, you will notice there's like a tradition of there being this kind of like, it's almost like a cold open where just like, we're just gonna do some ridiculous spy shit. Like I remember there was one, I think it was like From Russia with Love, or it might have been Thunderball, where he has like a jetpack. Like he's like gonna fight some dudes, and then he gets off to the roof and he puts on a literal jetpack and he's like the Rocketeer and flies off. And it's like, it's always ridiculous. It's always over the top, but it just sets the stage like, oh, you're watching a Bond movie. Like this is gonna be some like next level spy stuff. You gotta go with it. All right, you gotta go with it.
I had a great time in the intro because my girl Tina Turner was singing.
Yeah, she was.
And so I was like, yeah, dancing along, having the time of my life. And then he came out with that string and shit. But that was fun times. I didn't know that it was written by Bono and the Edge of U2.
Interesting. So that opening bungee jump, the highest one from a structure in a movie, the drop was over 722 feet. So now we're in a Russian facility with explosives, ammunition. I don't know what they're harboring in there.
Fake barrels that Donkey Kong used to throw in the Donkey Kong country. That's my reference point.
Oh, and then so he breaks in, but then he comes in from a vent that's in a bathroom. And so he has to knock out the guy that's on the toilet. And I turned to Ken, I was like, who does number 2 work for? And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, Austin Powers. It's reversed. Austin is the one on the toilet, but like someone sneaks in from a vent or like from a panel. And so then we had to pause and I had to play him that scene. I was like, I feel like the more James Bond movies I watch, the more I'll understand about Austin Powers.
And I think that was Nick's point, that he was so mad at us that we knew all the Austin Powers movies. And he's like, how do you even know the references? And we're like, we don't.
We're living on vibes.
And it's honestly, it's wild watching these James Bond movies because then I start to recognize like how many like spin-offs and parodies and tropes and cliches and they weren't always tropes and cliches and parodies. They used to be like legit, genuine, like this, like the whole like the villains have numbers and not names. Like that's James Bond. Like you don't see his face, you only see him petting a cat. Like that's James Bond. Like there's like so many of these things are just like they used to be quintessential James Bonds. They're still part of like the James Bond alchemy, but they're probably more famous now because they just get parodied and referenced and joked about. And sometimes I think the worst James Bond movies make fun of themselves basically because they tread in these tropes too hard and it becomes a joke of itself. But like and so like when you see them in this movie, it's like, yeah, you see it in James Bond movies because that's where they come from. That's where they live. They don't just live in Austin Powers and and all the other spin-offs.
Inspector Gadget.
Inspector Gadget.
But what I do love is that it is like there is a symbiotic relationship between a lot of the spy movies. I think the success of like the Mission Impossible movies kind of pushed the James Bond movies into more action arena. Even I think if it's not just Mission Impossible, definitely the Bourne Identity and how well that one did. That started why we even probably got a Daniel Craig version of the character, because they compete. He's not getting off on vibes and winks anymore. There's a lot of competition. So I kind of like that the genre is just like kind of pushing each other, so that's fun. I don't know what's going on in this movie, but it's nice to see Origins, go back home, see the OG,
We meet 006, played by Sean Bean. He's taken hostage as they're setting these detonators all over the facility. And something that comes around later in the movie is 006 tells James Bond to set them for 6 minutes. He only sets them for 3 minutes. So 006 is taken hostage and then he is shot, or we are made to believe he is shot. And then the goofiest escape in all of cinema happens where he hides behind this rack of barrels and kind of just creaks through the facility, hops on a conveyor belt, and shoots himself out.
Yes, after releasing all the Donkey Kong barrels and knocking over all the bad guys.
Yes.
Yes. And then from here, it gets even more ridiculous. Like, this is where I was like starring all the like classic 007 tropes that we saw. So Bond makes his way outside, and now he's running outside, and then he tries to get into an airplane, but then he can't, so he gets on a motorcycle, and but in the meantime, like the general bad guy, Oramov, is like chasing him out the door. And he says, like, so now like Oramov and like 50, Soviet bad guys are chasing Bond, and they've got machine guns, and Bond's going away on a motorcycle. And Oramov says, wait. Like, wait for what? Like, why aren't you shooting him? And it's all Bond villains and Bond movies love a very dramatic death. Like, would much rather, like, wait, hold on. We're going to watch this guy drive his motorcycle off a cliff. Don't shoot him, because I want to see him. I want to watch him fly his motorcycle off a cliff. Don't, stop. Wait. Why are we waiting? It's because it's what we do in Bond movies. We make the dramatic death. Like, yes, you have a 5% chance of escape, but it's going to be awesome.
There's no such thing as a double tap in a Bond movie.
Nick, I have a question. So one of the fun facts is that this is the first completely original James Bond movie without a reference to any of Ian Fleming's novels or short stories. Does this happen after this point, or do they ever go back to referencing his like novels or short stories?
Yeah. Well, I know the only one that I know for sure is Casino Royale, the Daniel Craig one, is an Ian Fleming Bond novel, but I don't know for sure any of the others. I would have to look that one up. But it's not the last time. Like, they definitely went back to Ian Fleming at least once. But I would venture to guess that, kind of like you were mentioning, like, as the kind of genre of spy films kind of like went into this upward spiral, they might have had to go more original content to kind of come up with that.
Yeah. Okay.
As Nick was saying, he drives his motorcycle off a cliff into the airplane he wasn't able to get into earlier, and like pulls the little stick thing and somehow gets the airplane back up in the air when he is like 50 feet from the ground.
The crazy. Okay, the math on this one wasn't math for me. This man at high speeds flies off a cliff with the motorcycle. So the motorcycle, if you're watching on video, I'm visually showing you. The motorcycle is here. The plane is here. I thought it was gonna be cool, like he was gonna fly the motorcycle into the back of the plane. No, he flies over and then jumps off the motorcycle. Motorcycle falls. He's falling, but now he's trying to dive into the plane, and I'm like, how he getting there?
Yeah, well, you make yourself more because the plane starts going down instead of out. And so, yeah,
it's unfucking realistic, because when you do finally dive into the plane, it's not a soft place to land, Jackie.
I'm not arguing that it is.
You're going the same speed. The plane and Bond are going the same speed. So he just kind of like changes lanes. Just whoop, and now he's in the plane.
His brain would have been splattered on the fucking windshield of the plane.
Here's the thing you don't know, though, Danielle. This is not the first time James Bond has done this. He does this all the time. Just in Moonraker, he died. Another dramatic death. Instead of shooting Bond, they like shoot the plane, and then the villains like skydive out. And so Bond's like in a plane. Is like, well, I'm not going to stay in this plane. I'm going to jump out, even though I don't have a parachute. And he like, villain is skydiving with a parachute. Bond is skydiving without one. And he like catches up to the villain, takes his parachute in midair, and like survive. Bond does this stuff all the time. It's what he does.
Well, then I think everyone needs to stop bitching about the Fast and the Furious movies and how Dom is fighting a building in a parking lot and crashing through cement and not dying, because the unrealness of this started with this crazy white man and his nonsense. But anywho, continue, Jackie. I just was saying, for me, I was at the edge of my seat saying, this is not logical. I thought for sure he was going to have a parachute. I said, this dude's trying to get into the plane. No.
Conceit to the genre, Danielle.
Oh, there's a lot of conceding in this movie, Nick.
And we're only like 5 minutes into the movie.
This is the cold open here. We haven't come to the credits yet.
So we do see the facility blow up, and then we get Goldeneye by Tina Turner. And then now we're in Morocco in this weird car race situation on like a road with pin hair turns. So it is James driving an Aston Martin DB5. You're welcome.
Classic
Dan.
James Bond car.
Which they do switch to BMWs later in this movie because there was a deal with BMW.
Yeah.
Yes, and this was the first time that they had a German car,
Yep.
I think.
Famke Janssen shows up as, I don't even know her name. What's her name?
Senya on a top.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thighs that kill. That's who she is. She's driving a Ferrari Spider 355. Is Moneypenny the one that's in Bond's car, or is it a random blonde lady?
No, it's a lady who is sent by M to do an evaluation on him because remember his BFF coworker just died, so they're trying to see if he's good.
Which obviously not. If we're getting our adrenaline from driving these crazy streets racing with a Ferrari.
I will have to give him credit for being a bad bitch, because who gets a lady who's supposed to be evaluating you in your car, you're in a race with your next side piece on in the next car racing against you. You're filling her up with adrenaline. You know, she knows you want to sleep with the other lady, and then she sleeps with you.
It's like the champagne in the car.
I mean,
Sealed
I
the
like a
deal.
man with a plan, and it was chilled.
It was.
So this is like again, kind of like putting in context of like the history of Bond. There's always women in a Bond movie that are just like, they are unnamed characters, and they all do this. They're all like, oh, James, you're incorrigible. And there's like whatever, like he'll like put their lives in danger or like do something ridiculous, and then he's just like, oh, but hey, and then just like, oh, okay. Like it's like with him, he doesn't do any, there's no lines or anything. He just like, look, I have champagne, and she's like, oh, right. And but it's like, but honestly, I think this is another, like, I think Goldeneye is trying to shift past old Bonds, because in previous ones, like there was a lot of just like, why are these women just literally just having sex with Bond with no context whatsoever? Like, you met me 15 minutes ago and now we're in bed. Like, it's wild. But like the older ones would get like, it is not okay. Like there is no consent happening. There's no like, oh, James, this is amazing. It's like, actually, James, I don't want to, but you're forcing the issue. Like there's one, I think it might be Thunderball, the old Sean Connery, where he literally like a woman is like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened. My boss is gonna kill me. And he's like, well, I have a price for my silence. I won't tell your boss if, and then like, and it's like, oh, gross. So it's like this kind of idea of like, oh, James is like, there's a pattern that's like kind of part of the Bond alchemy, but this is like as okay as it gets. Like it's still weird, right? It's still, I don't love this idea, but it's like this is about as okay as it gets. And I think Goldeneye made a specific intentional thing to be like, this is as gross as Bond is going to be. Is I have champagne in the armrest of my car all the time, just in case I need to.
Does he also have Plan B condoms and STD tests? Do we ever get Bond taking a test? Because that's a lot of punan to be over the years.
Maybe
where's Q Branch on this? Like, is Q Branch gonna like create, like, you know, he's got like, oh, there's like a condom in his watch or something? I hope so. Q, do it.
Maybe it's like part of the M6 protocol is like standard STD testings once a month, just to make sure all our agents are still good to go.
Yeah, he needs one at least every 3 weeks.
So now we are playing Baccarat, like you do.
What is that game? And
don't
why do
know.
those cards have no numbers? I would be confused. I would have to count like
There was a time, Jackie, do you remember like vacationing in Reno and watching the like how to play the casino game channel in the hotel?
Jackie has brought it up.
Yes,
Came up and go because they were sick, and so they were just watching the man teach them how to play not backgammon. I think it was baccarat. And I
Yeah.
was like, we used to sit and watch. I still don't know how to play a single game. I'm confused on 21 sometimes.
But I swear, I know that when I was like 10 years old, I knew how to play Baccarat because I watched that channel so much. But yeah, now I have no idea how to play Baccarat.
Those skills are lost. But I did learn that there is a lady in a gold dress standing behind the top. And that lady, whatever the last Timothy Dalton one was, she won a contest to cameo in the next James Bond movie. Well, then all of the litigation and stuff and figuring out a new Bond and everything happened. But they held true to their word, and that lady in the gold dress is the contest winner. Thank you. License to Kill. She was the contest winner, and so she got to be an extra in the next Bond movie, just as she had won.
6 years later.
6 years later.
That's cool. At least they kept their promise.
Yeah, good for her.
Yeah, I like that. So we find out that on a top is Georgian. And then he gets back in his car, and it's like this little receipt spits out that has like his next operative and like a dossier on her, so he knows what he's supposed to be doing.
Well, it's again, this is part of the Bond alchemy. It's super spy shit. Like he took the pictures, like he snuck out and took the pictures, and then within minutes he goes to his car and he has intel on all the things that he just took pictures on. He knows who's in Onatop is. He knows where the boat is. It's like, that's magic. It's spy stuff. It's so cool.
It's
the
paper.
Manticore. So now we also see she leaves with some man with credentials she needs.
Yes. Some admiral.
And apparently her superpower is that her thighs can crush the chest of a man. They're just like fooling around in the bed, and then she just cuts off his air supply. But the way she does it is, she is manic.
She's fucking psycho. Okay, like that kind of foreplay. I mean, I know people are into pain, but she is digging her nails into his chest. She's like, I don't want to say slapping him, but she's just like throwing him around. And then she's like, hey, making all these noises. But everything she does sounds like she's getting an orgasm off of it. Even later on when she fights Bond, it's like, girl.
I think she is. Like, I think that's the character, is that is her kink. She gets sexual pleasure from killing people. I think like, so I don't think it's like it sounds. I think we're meant to believe that she actually is. Are we kink shaming Xenia Onatop here?
Yes. I am. I'm gonna say
I hate to do it, but also I think part of it was just, and it could be James Bond lore, that like crazy shit happens, but there was definitely overacting happening in these scenes.
She was scary. That's what it was. It wasn't even the kink itself, but it was like, you're in danger, sir. I wanted to help him. Like, do you not see? It's like a wild animal. Yes. You don't see you about to get tore the fuck up.
I think I was just gonna say, like, is that a critique against masculinity? Like, he's just so enraptured by her like sexuality that he doesn't see the danger that's kind of lurking behind it.
100%.
That's a fair assessment.
Especially that the point in which she does kill him is when he turns over and he's on top. So he thinks that he has the upper hand at this point. He's like, okay, I'll let you slap me around, but I'm about to thrust, right? And she's like, nah, homie. And he says, and he doesn't even, like, he's still holding on to his masculinity, where he's like, I can't breathe? Question mark? It's not even like he doesn't even grasp. He's not even fighting back because he he has lost the plot at
Yeah,
this point,
the
and he's
idea that
scared to
he's gonna
say
die doesn't cross his
it.
mind.
No.
No. Yeah. But then, like, speaking of Bond lore, though, is like there is a long history of Bond villains having like weird kind of like odd job in Gold. I wanted to say Gold Member. It's Goldfinger is the actual movie. Goldfinger like throws like a razor brimmed hat to like
Yeah.
slice things in half, or like Jaws from Moonraker and others like bites people with his teeth. Like it's like there's always Dr. No, the very first one, has these like mechanical bionic hands that crush things. Like Bond villains, there's a long history of Bond villains having these kind of like interesting, unique, kind of superpower type, villainy. And Xenia Onatopp is just the next one. She, I think, is the only one that has this kind of kink, like she gets sexual pleasure from murdering people, that's kind of unique, but this is not, this is part of the Bond alchemy. This is part of the lore. This is what happens.
She has stolen the card she needs because Bond is not aware at the time, but she is planning on stealing a Tiger helicopter that has a lot of sophisticated tech on it that she needs for the next part of her plan. Onatopp and
Her partner, they
Her-
end up overtaking two
Yes.
guys so that they could take the helicopter without anybody knowing. And Bond
again-
tries to stop it, but they hold him back
Yeah.
because of it.
And again, it's Xenia's sexuality that gets takes over the
Yep.
pilots and they steal a helicopter. It's because she's irresistible.
Yeah, she doesn't even
kills
have
them.
to
it's
do
because
much.
she has boobs. That's
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
And then the next scene is, I wrote computery stuff. They're just like in a bunker somewhere in the former Soviet Union, and it's a bunch of like programmers and stuff, and they have this really sophisticated satellite that can talk to Goldeneye, which is this weapon that's in space.
That can target pretty much anywhere you want to
Yep.
send lasers, bombs, I don't know. But this is the first Bond film to use computer generated imagery, and it was probably one of the last ones that they used miniatures and some of like the practical effects in comparison. But the computer generated imagery, because we meet Boris, we meet the lead actress, which I cannot remember her name.
Natalia.
Natalia. We meet these characters, and Boris, played by Alan Cumming, is just a hornbag, like programmer, developer, whatever. And every password that he has some sort of trick question like attached to it.
Riddle.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, so he's a fucking Riddler, essentially.
He is.
Right. One of the graphics that comes up it reminds me of like a Nintendo graphics from that time. Like, I'm like, wow, how far have we come? My God. Because this was state of the art when it came out.
Yeah. It reminds me of the scene in Camp Nowhere where they're like, scramble the jets, take out Milwaukee. That's all I heard.
Honestly, like one of the parts that I just laugh most about, like going back on all these old movies, is like what was like cutting edge, high tech. Like there's like this like hacker shit in the 90s. Like now, like 30 years later, is like, oh my God, like what did we think we were doing? Like, but there was so much like mythos around it of just like what are these like weird nerdy techie computer guys doing? And it's like they're not doing that, but but we thought they were. It was mind-boggling, high-tech computer hack the mainframe shit. Like
I think it's also because back then the general public really had no knowledge base of it, right? And so it did feel very foreign, and I think they could get away with doing the stupidest shit. Like I'm sure if you had a real programmer from back then would have been like, that's not what we do.
Yeah.
Y'all are tripping.
Boris goes out for a smoke, and
Natalia goes to go get coffee, so they're both
yes.
not with everybody else.
Xenia and the other guy come in, they shoot everyone.
I'll help you out with all the Russian names. I got you.
Thank you. And they're there because there's a very important, they need the key codes and the like little card in order to recalibrate Goldeneye and lock onto a target.
We get more Xenia killing people and
Yes.
enjoying it.
Yeah, and then we get Natalia is in like the break room and she knows shit's going down. So she sees a vent above her and she climbs up, and you think she's climbing into the vent. They hear her, so Xenia goes in there, shoots up the ceiling, and is
And
like,
having an orgasm.
Yeah.
yeah.
And then says, I had to ventilate someone, as if that's a thing somebody says.
That's
But Natalia was hiding in a cabinet, like it was a red herring. She's trying to figure what the fuck happened. She sees that Goldeneye has been armed, but it's pointed at her facility. So she does this flying leap under some concrete stairs. It looks like she flies like 10 feet across the room. And then we're like, what is that really going to protect you if like you have this electric pulse is what Goldeneye is, the weapon is. And then like everything's just on fire, things are falling, but she survives because she's a survivor.
Well, I appreciate the fact that she's not a damsel in distress throughout this movie. Like, she really does take care of herself. It's not very often that Bond actually has to save her, per se. I'm not sure if that's part of the Bond lore, like, or was this like one of the first times that we see this? Question.
It's definitely like I haven't seen the two Timothy Dalton ones that were like in the 80s. So maybe it happened, but definitely not in like the Sean Connerys and the Roger Moores. Was there like an actual woman who could take care of herself? Or like I just say like in Moonraker, like late 70s Roger Moore, there's like one of the scientists is a woman, but it's very much like Roger Moore's like, well, a woman astronaut. How about that? And then like she's also a CIA agent. It's like, get out of here. A woman CIA. Like there's like that's a lot of like, but she doesn't. So she could, like her character could, but she doesn't actually
get a chance to.
Yeah. So like I think this really is kind of a move to get women actually having more oomph, more substance, more power, more perseverance. Yeah, I think this is part of that shift that we're seeing a move in Bond.
And then in the next scene, we see it too because they're debriefing because M6 knows that Goldeneye has been activated. And so they're going into the briefing room and Moneypenny shows up and she's dressed very formally. Her hair's all done. And James starts hitting on her.
He always does. Like, yeah, that's what James and Moneypenny do is, or actually I should like, so this is the switch. I think you're going to mention this. Like, usually it's James flirts with Moneypenny and Moneypenny swoons.
Yes.
And at this point, she's like, no, I was going out on a date. I was called into work. And then he makes some offhanded comment. And she's like, you never had me. Like, you can't be reactionary about a date when you've never taken me out on a date. So whatever. Yeah. And then she also throws in, someday you need to make good on your innuendos. So she's kind of dishing out what he's always been dishing out. And now
he's debriefing, and that's when we see M come in kind of sneakily behind them and catches them in some gossip, I guess you could say. And she ain't playing no games. Yeah. I do have to interject and say something about Dame Judi Dench makes me think of my grandma, like as if she's the white Nana.
I could see that. That's a white Myrtle.
Yes.
Right there.
Yeah. Okay.
Like she's sweet Nana, but with an edge, which is Myrtle too.
Yes.
Oh, so we were debriefed on the incident. The Soviet Union says that it was just an accident during routine training. Everything's fine here.
Governments change, but the lies stay the same.
Yes. And now we get to meet Q with all of his wonderful toys.
Could we just real quick, like, I think we kind of mentioned this earlier, but M being a woman and like calling out, like she kind of has this great monologue where she's like, you know, you don't like, it's not, she doesn't say you don't like me because I'm a woman. She says you don't like me because you don't like my methods. Like I do things differently than my predecessor.
Mhm.
You don't like the way I do things. And I think you're a misogynistic dinosaur. And kind of like, I think like signals like this Bond movie and every Bond movie after this is going to be different. Like we're doing
Yes.
things different. I kind of like heard that dialogue and I'm like, I think like there's this sort of meta conversation happening that
Yeah.
things are going to be different in the Bond movies from here on out. I was like, I thought that was kind of cool, like the way they did that and gave those lines to Dame Judi Dench, who delivered them brilliantly, of course, because she's
Yes.
Judi Dench.
I also love that when they're getting drinks, or she's getting bourbon, which is apple juice with 2 lumps of ice cubes.
Ice. Yeah.
Ice
A
and-
glass ice cube.
Ice cube, yeah. And Pierce Brosnan is drinking ice water instead of the famous vodka martini when he's drinking. So glad to know that they weren't lushing it up on set.
I would have enjoyed if Judi Dench just got sloppier and sloppier as the like movie progressed. She's like, shit's fucked.
Oh, but come on, how many takes do you think Judi Dench needed to run those lines? She's only
0.
having 2 drinks to do that whole
Yeah.
thing. She's got it nailed.
Does Q give James anything aside from the clicky detonator pen?
Yes, a belt.
And a car.
Oh yes, he gets the BMW Z3 is his new fancy car.
Yes. I love this Q branch stuff. Like that's one of the parts of James Bond movies and I was like, this is the best. Like just I don't know, just gizmos and gadgets aplenty. I'm all about it.
It's Alfred. Like just show me what you got, Alfred. Like what toys do you have for me?
Like you were saying, that so much of this is James Bond canon that it's so ingrained in cinematic history that we see now this version of these characters in different movies. We see in a lot of action movies, a lot of different superhero movies, there's always that person that does the gadgets and makes the updates. So you get a very Q-esque vibe. So much so that, like, again, I haven't seen a lot of these movies but it did feel like familiar because of it. And to know that it most likely stemmed from them it was interesting.
And then James has to, where does he fly to? Russia? Okay.
Yeah.
And then he is picked up by, who is the man?
CIA agent from America.
Yeah.
And
Wade.
And this is the one of many appearances that he makes.
Yeah. It's another like canon thing. Like James always has a CIA counterpart, a CIA buddy who's like not quite as good as James Bond. But this Wade, like this version of that character, I'm like, this guy's a clown. Like, why did you make this guy a clown?
He was very bumbling.
Yeah, which is kind of part of James Bond. Like it's I think
making
Bond,
fun of Americans.
Well, yes, and rightfully so. But also like just making fun of itself, kind of like as opposed to like Jason Bourne or Mission Impossible or it's like James Bond never takes itself too seriously. And so there's always a bit like we see it in Q Branch where it's a little slapsticky, and we see it in Wade who's he's just a clown. But of course it's the American that's the clown, but that's fine.
This character reminds me of Marcus Brody from Indiana Jones. Just like he'll get it done, he'll kind of stumble his way through it, but it'll end up fine in the end.
Yeah.
At the same time, Boris is trying to track down Natalia. And so he finds her and he sends her a message like, hey, it's not safe. Let's meet at this church. So she's put her faith in Boris, unfortunately.
Yeah, because she finds him. She's looking for him. She goes to a Xerox place and pretends she's going to buy all this stuff so she could get access to try to find him. And she sees that he's online. And she goes to the church and he, of course, bucks her over.
That scene, of course, made me laugh because, like, oh yeah, you have to find like a computer store just to find a computer to use that's on the internet. Like it's so 90s hacker stuff again. But yeah, she ends up finding Boris and meeting Boris and trusting Boris, sadly.
Yes, and then we find out that Boris is in on it, and so now she has been captured. Thunder Thighs team.
And the reason that they even know that they need to capture her is because at one point general guy, I don't know what who this man is.
There's a war room, and we have
Yeah.
General Orumov
Yeah.
with Defense Minister Mishkin.
And it seems like Defense Minister is suspicious of him.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, there's 2 survivors. And so he already knew about Boris, obviously, because he's on his payroll, but had no idea that Natalia was still out there. So he freaks the fuck out because he's trying to retire and dip and blame the whole scenario of everything that happened on some separatists. Like, but now he knows he's in trouble. He's got to eliminate Natalia before she tells, because she saw him and Ho Biddy. I don't remember her name. What's her name again?
Xenia.
Thunder dies.
Despite like other than the characters' names, y'all are following the plot really well. You're doing great.
Thank you. Now, this is the scene where we show up to Robbie Coltrane. Hagrid. We show up to his bar or his club, and we get the scene behind Danielle, Minnie Driver, singing a lovely rendition of Stand By Your Man. I could have watched her all day.
When he tells his CIA like counterpart that he needs like help to be able to find the Russian people or whatnot, Giannis stuff.
I think it was like to find this one, like, so he's going after this group called Giannis. That's like, they're the ones that stole the helicopter, and they're the ones that,
right.
He's like, I need Giannis's competitor to help me get a hold of Giannis. He's like, I know this other arms dealer, villain, bad guy. I'll talk to that guy, and he's gonna get me in touch with Giannis. So that's where we end up in. His name is Zukovsky.
And he has a history with Bond, right?
Yeah,
because
he's an arms dealer and Bond's a spy, and they've fought each other in the past.
And he's limping, and he's like, I gave him the limp. So there's beef as soon as his CIA guy's like, how are you going to even convince him to work with you if you hurt him? If y'all have beef? And he's like, money will supersede anything. Yeah.
And then all of a sudden we're swimming in a very fancy pool.
That was okay. Like, so to be real, this is a plot point where I was like, wait, what? So he does this whole thing where he gets Robbie Coltrane involved so he can like connect himself with Giannis. And then he ends up in a swimming pool with Xenia Onatopp, and Xenia brings him to Giannis. He's like, we don't even need the dude. Like, just get Thunder Thighs to take you. What's the problem?
He didn't know she was going to come. And if you go to Russia, you've got to go to a bathhouse. Hello.
I told Ken, that is my perfect pool. Like, it is just a little round pool. I could tippy toe in. It's inside, so I'm not going to get sunburned. I could just enjoy my best life in my little tiny pool. I just need it like chest deep. That's it. And he's just floating in the middle. He's not doing anything. He's just chilling. And then we get like in the sauna room, Thunder Thighs and him start like wrestling, but kind of making out. But then she bites his lip, and like then he realizes like
this bitch crazy.
Yeah,
he picks up on it a little faster than our Admiral friend did in the beginning.
Yes, and then it ends with him picking her up and setting her on the hot stones in the sauna and burning her ass.
Yeah.
She didn't seem mad about it though.
No, she did for a second, but then it was almost like, I don't know, she starts yelling and screaming again. And once he throws her to the floor, and he's like, I'm not playing with you, bitch. Because he pulls out a gun. He's like, I'm fucking done with these games. Because she's a cobra snake, essentially. She tried to squeeze him to death. He's like, I ain't playing these fucking games. And again, orgasming all over the place as she's getting brutally, like, I'm like, what is this? Bitch, you crazy.
And it is kind of another funny sort of like twist on Bond lore, because he sleeps with everybody, like villain, friend, random stranger, like he'll sleep with anybody. He doesn't care. So he's like slept with, double crossing, villain henchmen before. But I think this time he's like, okay.
Maybe
even James Bond has a line. Like,
and she was it. So she takes him to Giannis, and when he gets there, that's when he meets his brethren.
Yeah, finds out Giannis is 006.
Yes.
Yeah.
And now his face is scarred up because James set the timers for 3 minutes instead of 6. But they're in like this weird, there's lots of statues around. Like, is it a statue graveyard? Like,
is it a graveyard? But there's lots of statues.
And prior to this, when he was with Robbie Coltrane's character, he informs him that there's a group of Russians that worked with England to try to help in World War II, I believe, try to take them down and be safe. But what the government does is they get this intel, but they end up sending these people back, and these people are all killed, mother, children, everybody, for being traitors, essentially. But we now learn when MI6 comes back and he's telling his whole villain story, because they love to do that.
He was
Don't get
monologuing.
He's not getting straight to business, telling him the whole fucking plot. We find out that he's an orphan and that MI6 didn't think he would remember his parents in that story. So the whole reason that all this shit is happening is because he's trying to get revenge against his parents, against MI6,
the British government, like everybody,
and Russia as well. So he's playing both sides. I'm very surprised I knew any of that.
You did great.
You're doing great, Danielle. You did
Look at us. The least disappointed Nick has been in any movie we've done.
This is wonderful. Y'all are doing awesome.
Oh, we still have time.
We understood the assignment. We knew how important Bond is to you.
Yes. But
And
then we get into elaborate death number 2. Like, why don't we just kill this guy? No. We got to do it dramatic style.
We're going to dart him.
Right.
Make him pass out. He's going to wake up tied to a helicopter in the pilot seat while Natanya's in the back screaming her head off because it's set to like self-destruct in like 10 seconds. So what does Bond do? He uses his head and just starts bonking the shit out of all of the controls to get something to happen. So he turns the helicopter on, but his hands are still tied. He can't do anything else. So he keeps whacking it. And at the last second, he hits the self-eject button. And so the whole but usually when you eject from cleaner, thank you. Usually the top just like disconnects and the people are ejected and you're already wearing parachutes. No. This has like a whole cockpit scenario with parachutes attached to it. So we make sure everyone is safe.
That's so convenient.
I was confused because I was like, wow, they're shooting up real high in the air. They're going to crash and burn when they land. But I forgot that there's parachutes that come out.
Yeah.
And also when you said it
to the ground.
But also like, how did he get out of the ties?
Yeah, like he did it so fast. Like now that he's not in danger, like, oh yeah, I can just it looks like I just
right.
Off, no problem.
He was
So
panicking.
confused.
I don't know. We find out that there's another Goldeneye.
There's another satellite, yeah.
That was part of 006's monologue.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and he's going to blow up London and create chaos and send them back to financial Stone Ages. Like he's going to disconnect all the computery stuff.
Which I think is a cool plan, but James Bond is playing with him psychologically when they meet up again. And he's like, you're just a common thief. You're a bank robber. You're not doing anything.
So now they're trying to frame James Bond. Is that correct? Or did I?
Yeah, I think that's why they did the dramatic death with the helicopter. Like they're trying to make it seem like Bond took the Tiger helicopter and he's like, right. But then, so he ends up in this scene where he's in the custody of Defense Minister Mishkin and Mishkin's interrogating Bond and Natalia. And then like everybody in this conversation, I guess, like everybody figures out the truth. Like, oh, it's Ourumov. It's, like, here's the plan. And Mishkin's like, oh shit. But then Ourumov storms in and he's like,
he should have never he keeps telling Ourumov takes the gun. That's James Bond's gun. And he's like, oh, you better put that down. Bitch, you better take it. You just learned that this dude's trying to kill everybody. What are you doing?
Yeah. As soon as he walked in the room, just like grab the gun and shoot him. Like, what are you doing?
And so Ormov kills everybody, and then he changes the clip, I guess. I don't
Yeah.
know what's happening.
He like
And then
empties
gives
it
it
and then gives it back to Bond.
right.
Yeah.
And then and he's like pretty much saying, okay, now I'm framing you.
Yeah.
And then James Bond figures out a way to like get himself out of that scenario with his lady friend.
And they go into the archives and they knock all of the shelves over and blockade themselves inside. But it seems like you just go around a wall and you're in the archives.
We need an excuse to use the gadget with the belt grappling hook thing.
Yes.
The whole setup was just so you could take off your belt and use it to swing across whatever.
So they get Natalia, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And James needs a vehicle, and we haven't used tanks yet, so why not?
Let's go. Let's drive down the streets of St. Petersburg in a tank.
It is a T-62 tank, if anyone was wondering. Penn knew it right away. So now they have Natalia on a train. Sean Bean is trying to straight up rape her. Not a great look. I hated it.
I must have fast forwarded past that part.
I think this might, like, I don't know, again, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but it kind of feels more of the meta, like, this is a new James Bond. Like, we're taking 006 and making him do all the gross villainy stuff that 007 used to do. Like, we're shifting all of the really disgusting elements and putting them on 006. He's the villain. 007 is a new version of 007. He doesn't do that. 007 doesn't. 006 does.
I feel like it's a missed opportunity to not have 00 live. It's similar to Doctor Who with the Master, right? So like the Master is kind of a villain that's on par with Doctor Who, similar powers, similar thought processes, almost knowing all the secrets of Doctor Who. So being like a really good adversary to him, having someone like 006 kind of continue on, like he doesn't die. It's with Sherlock Holmes and
Moriarty. Yeah, I was thinking the
right.
same thing. Yeah.
So being able to have someone like when he gets to that point and they get James again later on in the movie and he's able to say, oh, well, is this the new one Q made for you? So knowing all the gadgets and stuff, I think it would have been fun to have just kind of like this long lasting overarching bad guy that doesn't quite die but may pop up all the time because he knows how James thinks, and that pushes James to have to do things outside of the box. Like I feel like, why can't we see something like that? That would be cool. Somebody who's been an agent, maybe not this character but maybe down the line, who is pissed and wants to get revenge. Have they done that yet?
Well, like, because the thing is, like, when you were describing that, I'm like, I think the problem is that Bond has that with like the terrorist organization Spectre and their leader Ernest Blofeld, and that's where you get the cat petting and the number 2, number 10, number 12, like the whole organization. Like the organization of Spectre pops up in several Bonds and like kind of like keeps going throughout. But to be honest though, like the leader of Spectre, Ernst Blofeld, is like, he's not 006. Like he's not at that level. So I think in the Bond lore, I don't know if there's room for 2 of those things. Right. But like I wish 006 might have been better in that role. Yeah, so you're right. It would have been cool to see that kind of that adversarial thing extend beyond one movie.
Yeah.
Dang.
And at this point, all the bad guys get off the train, right?
Except Oromov. Bond killed Oromov here, and then Xenia and 006 escape.
Okay. And Bond has somehow driven the tank onto the tracks. So the train can crash in. Well, he shoots the train and then the train is headed to crash into the tank. And so Natalia is trying to hack in to see where Boris is. And so she's tracing his signals, and James like, bitch, we gotta go. This train is about to crash, and there's a bomb on the train that's only set to 3 minutes.
Dramatic death number 3, where it's like you couldn't just kill him, you can just blow up the train. No, you had to give him 3 minutes.
Yeah, you lock him in this cage as like, and again, these are really dumb mistakes on 006 because he knows James and he knows what he would do. Like,
He even says, like, there's a line, he says, "Good luck with the floor, James. You have
Yeah.
the same 6 minutes you gave me." He knows exactly what James is going to do, how long it's going to take, and he lets him do it anyway. Like,
Yeah.
It's so stupid.
So they get out in the nick of time. Natalia at the very last second sees where Boris is. He's in the Caribbean. We got to go to the Caribbean. That's where the second Goldeneye is. Or it's not where the Goldeneye is. It's where the satellite large enough to communicate with Goldeneye is. And so
The CIA guy. He
yes.
contacts the CIA guy to help. And she says she's going with him,
Yeah.
which also they screw at this
oh yeah,
at
we get
this
this
point.
weird, like, broody, moody, like, there's that whole, like, she has this monologue about, like, that's not why you're alive, that's why you're alone, and, like, all this, like, I think the Daniel Craig ones did this thing a little bit better, of, like, the Bond girl and Bond actually, like, falling in love ish.
Mhm.
But we get a couple of scenes where we're trying to get the idea that Bond and Natalia love each other. I'm like, I don't know if I'm buying that. Not
It's
yet.
been like 3 hours
Yeah.
Yeah.
total of how much you've spent with each other.
You're
running
trauma
in fear.
bonding. That's
Right.
it.
Yeah. But yeah, we do get a couple scenes where it's like, I get what you're trying to do. We're not there yet.
I would like a Bond girl to actually be a wife and a mother. And somehow she's going on a business trip, gets caught up in this shit. And she's like, you know what? I'm going to have one for the road because I've almost died. I don't know if I'm going back. And if I'm going to go back to my husband and kids, I'll have fun with this man. He's not the marrying type.
Yeah.
And then I go home and pretend nothing happened. I know that's probably not a good life skill to push for people who are married, but I would believe that more than we're in love.
So now we get the super mega, like, layer. Like, this is another Bond trope. It's like, why we're in the evil layer that's, like, built into the side of a volcano and, like, shit like that. And we got yeah.
And then the, like, satellite comes out of the ocean,
Or like a
mark?
lake of some kind.
Yeah. And it's giant. Like, it is huge.
How
Which
do these things get built? How
like the Death Star.
exactly? Like, how many contractors do you need to build this evil layer with this giant satellite that's under
Yes.
like 1 million gallons of water? Like, how does nobody knows? How is there not like they're flying over looking for it? I'm like, there would be just construction equipment just strewn about like everywhere. Like, because these guys aren't just taking every single piece of evidence with them.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's not that deep under the water. So, like, you didn't see the outline from the air. Like, oh, that's a suspiciously large circle under the water. I wonder if that's the satellite we're looking for.
Conceit for the genre.
I love how when it is exposed, Natalia goes, oh, I guess that's why we never saw it. Glasses. Maybe 007 needs context.
Oh, Lord.
So now we see, I just have helicopter, Famke. This time, Mr. Bond, the pleasure will be all mine.
Oh, right. They crash the plane and they get one more fight between Bond and but Onatopp loses this time.
Yes, that's what it is. She jumps out of a helicopter. She's still tethered to the helicopter. She's boa constricting Bond, but then who shoots the helicopter?
Bond does. So, like, Natalia has like a gun on her back.
Got it.
So Bond like hooks her to the helicopter, shoots the helicopter with her gun. So the helicopter takes off, takes her with it, and she gets like pinned to a tree.
And I think he's able to do this because Natalia hits
Thunder
Thighs. And she's like, you'll have your turn kind of thing. But I think that's when she was distracted enough for Bond to be able to shoot up at the airplane. And the way in which this bitch dies was so satisfying for me. Probably the best part of the movie.
Because she dies in the way in which she kills.
Right.
It essentially squeezes her to death. And then I always did enjoy a good squeeze from
Bond. Yeah, that was corny as fuck.
Oh, so much corny. But it's part of the Bond alchemy. You gotta have a little bit of corny. I think it's gotta.
And so this is where we find out second Goldeneye is targeting London. 006 says, God save the Queen, as he like locks on, starts the countdown. James and Natalia are caught. There's leakage from one of the containers, and he set a detonator, or he was attempting to, and he didn't quite get to it.
He set it, and what ends up getting rid or shutting down the detonator is when they bring Bond to 006, and he pulls out all the things that could possibly be gadgets from Q, and it's his watch, actually. He's like, oh, this is a newer version, and so he hits the buttons to turn the detonator off. But he does not realize, which I think is very dumb of 006, to not look at every fucking piece of thing that man has on him to know that Q made something. So he takes the pen and he kind of just throws it. And that's when Boris, like that whole pen thing, I was trying my best to count. So we know that from the pen from Q, if you press it 3 times.
I can't even spin it like he does.
Right. It must have taken him a while to like get the hang of that without dropping it. But if you press it 3 times, it becomes a grenade. But if you press it another 3 times within the, I believe, 3 seconds, 6 seconds, I'm not sure, then you can stop the detonation. So he does that, and Bond is just watching, which again, 006 should have been like, why are you watching like that? You know? So that
happened in a whole intense moment, because at that point, Natalia had gone off to she like hacked the mainframe again.
Yes.
And changed the satellites. And so the satellite, instead of going over London, was going to come crashing into Earth. But Boris had to hack her codes to try and move the satellite. So there's this really intense scene where it's like Boris is trying to hack, but like 006 is trying to like threaten both Bond and Natalia to give the password to Boris. And it's all this there's a lot going on. And so like 006 is like really focused on, can Boris hack this, do the hacking thing.
And I love that they give Natalia the room and the opportunity to smack the shit out of Boris.
Yeah.
And at this point, this is when James finds his out to grab Natalia and try to go for cover, because Boris finally hits it enough and the pen drops where the oil leak has happened or whatever.
James whacks it out of his hand.
Right.
Yeah.
And then shit starts to go boom.
All chaos.
Boom. Yeah.
And then, so 006 escapes. Boris is invincible, but a bunch of nitrous oxide, I think, like essentially dry ice, like falls on him, and then he is frozen in his invincible state.
Yes, which is why my conceit to the genre is like, I'm wondering, like, why is there like both some like explosive gasoline type stuff that we just blew up with a grenade, and like this kind of like this liquid ice stuff? Like, why is all this stuff in this layer like just around to spill on people? Like,
and you don't need it. Like, it seems like it's just a secret mainframe for the satellite.
Yeah, but it made for a really good visual of Boris being frozen, and
maybe it's for phase 2 of their really bad plan. I have no idea, but not bright.
So now we're just in the satellite, and there's a part that like hangs down, and then there's like the dish below. I've never seen a satellite like this before.
Does a satellite like this exist? Like, is this real?
Because we are experts here at No More Late Fees on satellites.
People come here. You come for the movies. You stay for the satellite information.
I know there are big telescopes. I don't know if there's big satellites. I would assume so. I'll ask Ken.
If you know, comment below. If you know about
I know that one of the factoids that I ended up not putting in this document was that one of the satellites that they do show, or dishes or whatever, is the same one they use for contact, and it literally takes 10 minutes to walk across it.
So there are big satellites. Dishes. I guess we should be differentiating. Satellite dish. Versus the satellite in orbit.
So proven, we are experts.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we got 006 and 007 are chasing each other around this giant satellite, shooting at each other, and taking forever.
Yeah, I fast forwarded.
Like running, so much running, and everyone is a horrible shot except for Bond. And it concludes with he stomps on a trapdoor that has a ladder attached to it. So then now he's just hanging further over the satellite into like just open air. And now it's a fight on the ladder. And then 006 steps on his hand. And I don't even know how it happens, but eventually Alec gets thrown to his death, ? But he was so fucking high up.
Thank you.
And
He should have been
lands.
He should have been crushed. He was still, not only did he fall, like it shows that he looks like he broke bones, but he was still alive. There's no way. I'm no scientist, but I know about satellites. And if you fall on a satellite dish from that far up in the sky, you dead, bitch. There's no coming back.
Yes,
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. I was taken by like how they shot that too. Like they showed the whole fall. They showed the ending. Like I was like, my God. Like
I was very shocked at that too. I was like, oh my God. Because when they showed it I was like, oh, they're gonna show this. I thought pieces of his body would, like, the impact of that alone from there's no way.
Yeah.
And so then he's still alive. He's not dead, which we know is fake. But then this other piece of something falls on him to make it look like the most horrific death. But I was like, no, baby, that crash and fall was bad enough.
Yeah.
We didn't need anything else.
We didn't. I do really like the exchange right before Alec falls, where he says, let me guess, for England. And Bond says, no, for me. And it's a callback to earlier in the movie where they're like, don't go to get revenge, go to complete the mission. And so that's Bond kind of being like, nope, this is for revenge. Fuck you.
And it's really interesting too, because the character of Alec, he was originally supposed to be an older character, a mentor figure for Bond. So like it was offered to Anthony Hopkins and Alec Rickman. Well, they turned it down. And so they were like, okay, we'll get Sean Bean and we'll change the role to be his peer. And I think it would have been really cool if it was like his mentor, the person who taught him everything he knows, to find out it was like that would make it, the revenge part makes so much more sense.
He gets his revenge, which is another elaborate death. Like I think there was a moment where 006 had a gun pointed at Bond and it's like, just shoot him. Just shoot him.
Right.
Like, nope, we're gonna fall and we're gonna do the whole ladder thing. I'm like, what are we waiting for? We'll wait for drama and poetry. But anyways, yeah, then Bond escapes on a helicopter with Natalia and
Goldeneye burns up, re-entering the atmosphere.
Yeah.
But when they land somewhere and they're in the grass, do we miss that part?
Yeah. So what's his face? Wade shows up and he's like, good on you. And then James asks something like, well, weren't you supposed to bring backup? And he's like, I did. And it's all these Marines in ghillie suits jump up for no reason. Like, why?
Because it's funny, it's ridiculous, it's absurd, it's Bond. It's the alchemy, Jackie. It's the alchemy.
If he didn't come out, were they all just gonna lay there while these two go at it like rabbits? Because he's trying to tell Natalia, we got time to get one in, a quickie, and there ain't nobody around. And then it's like, surprise, there's like 80 motherfuckers in the grass with you.
They would have rolled into someone at some point.
Who knows?
And then
that's another classic Bond thing. Like I think there's a handful of them that end very similarly, where it's like, oh, finally we're alone, and then it's like either we are alone or we're not. It's like it's kind of part of the genre.
It's the first one of the movies where James Bond doesn't end on top of a woman.
Oh yeah, he does end up carrying her away.
Yes, and again, going back to things are a changing.
Yeah, and I like that Wade tells him, you can finish debriefing each other at Guantanamo.
Because they're in Cuba and they're not supposed to be there. So like when they first start this mission, Wade's like, we're not here. I don't know you. Like, because they're really not supposed to be there, especially as Americans. Okay, continue. Sorry. It
is weird watching movies or getting cultural references pre 9/11. Because pre 9/11, Guantanamo, it's just a military base on a beach. Like it's just like
right.
But now it's like you say Guantanamo. Oh, Guantanamo means something different now than it did in 1995. Yeah, just so when I heard that, I was like, what? Oh, I get it. Never mind.
Contextual in time. And that is Goldeneye.
Thank God we made it.
It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Well,
But like I said, I really did try.
you gave it a college try, Jackie, and
I
that's
did.
all we can do.
No.
Let's get into some fun facts before we get into our ratings. Let's just pick a few because there's just
So many.
Pierce Brosnan has a fear of heights, so he was not able to go to the Gregorian Dome and other parts of the Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico, so a stunt double had to be used for those scenes.
I love that Pierce Brosnan is just like me. He hurt his hand in his bathroom at his house in Malibu before shooting began.
Whoopsie.
So in several shots, his hands were doubled by his 22-year-old son, Christopher Brosnan, who was the third assistant trainee on the second unit. So this includes pulling on a handbrake in the Aston Martin DB5, flipping open the glove compartment to reveal a bottle of chilled Bollinger champagne, using the laser in the opening bungee jump, and cutting through the floor of the train with the laser in his wristwatch. Yeah, sounds about right. I would totally fuck up my hand before having to do something this important.
I also love that Chris Columbus, the director, is a big James Bond fan, and he was crushed when Pierce Brosnan didn't get cast when he was offered the part during was a phenomenal actor. And when the two worked together later on Mrs. Doubtfire, Columbus told Brosnan he'd make a great James Bond, even though at the time Pierce thought that ship had sailed. When MGM called Columbus telling him they were looking for the new James Bond, he recommended Pierce Brosnan for the role.
But speaking of Columbus recommending Brosnan, it is cool. Like Brosnan would have been a unique choice because he's one of the few that was not born in the United Kingdom. It is interesting, like all this, because in my head, Brosnan is Bond. Like he is very much Bond. He's very British, but he's not. He was born in Ireland. So
yeah, I think the reason we get the British vibe is because he moved to England very young. So he has the vibes, even though ancestrally he rocks Irish. I knew I liked him. I love Irish men.
And then something very interesting was several changes had to be made to the script during production because the plot was virtually identical to True Lies, which was being released at the time. So they were working on the fly, it seems.
And because of that back and forth of thinking that Timothy Dalton was going to take this role, this script was like very dark to match Dalton's darker portrayal of 007. So I don't know if it gets lighter in the next movie, Nick, but
yeah,
that would make more sense.
It does. Yeah. The Brosnans tend to get a little goofy as they go along.
A little more cheeky.
Yeah, a little more campy. Because there's always part of the Bond alchemy is there's got to be a little absurdity, a little camp, a little cheekiness. But I think like the interesting thing is like the good Bonds get the balance in the alchemy really well. The bad ones is pretty clear, like, oh, you went a little too heavy-handed on this part. Yeah, on one of those ingredients. Like some of the Daniel Craigs, they get a little too heavy on the broody, darky, like, you know, action. Like we're getting too serious. Like this is not. the Pierce Brosnans get a little too absurd, a little too campy, a little too cheeky. Yeah, Dalton would not have done well with the cheeky campiness. That was
no
not his thing.
But I find it so hilarious that he wouldn't do campy. He wouldn't do this, blah, blah, blah. But you're in Beauty and the Beautician.
Yeah, a Beautician
and Beast.
Yeah.
Was that Timothy Dalton?
Yes. With Fran Drescher.
Nice.
It's crazy that Pierce Brosnan only was paid $1.2 million to be James Bond in this movie. And the movie had a budget of $60 million, which with all of the special effects and stuff and all of the action scenes, like I see that, but $1.2 million to be James Bond in the 90s, I feel like that's
lowballing. Yeah. It was almost as if a woman was starring in it.
Or a person of color.
No, it would be less. If you have any thoughts, questions, confused as much as, well, we're not as confused as we thought, but if
we can explain it. If you need more detail, we can explain it to you because we got this.
Yeah.
You did great. Yeah.
And if you have questions about satellites, hit us up at No More Late Fees on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, and Threads. Hit us up. Let us know what you're thinking. And we're going to start with Nick with present day ratings.
Yeah, I think if you buy into the idea that James Bond is kind of a cultural touchstone, as a literary character, as a movie character, he has significance and importance, like just whether for better or for worse. If you kind of buy into that, I think you kind of got to buy into Goldeneye as part of that. Like, you don't need to watch all 30 whatever films, but like you need to kind of like, they're cultural milestones. And this one is one of the better ones. It's not perfect, but it's good. So I don't know. I think I would still buy it again, maybe verging on 5-day rental, but I really like it. It's worth seeing. It's, if not for just knowing about Bond, but knowing what Bond was like in 1995, like I think it's still definitely worth seeing. I think it holds up pretty well.
Jackie?
I'm gonna go 2-day rental. Like, if someone were to put it on, I would sit and watch it, but I'm never gonna put it on and sit and watch it.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I've seen a few of these. I've seen at least 4 James Bond movies, and Pierce Brosnan was my first Bond that I could remember. But I was very bored watching this movie. I
It
had
was long.
zero interest.
I was folding laundry the whole time I was watching it, so maybe
Yeah.
maybe I was bored too. I just didn't notice.
I fast forward a lot. Also, how we've been trained at this point to have it be nonstop action if you're gonna, or at least the plot to be interesting. I did not care about these characters. I did not care what happened to these characters. If they all blew up, I would not be upset. Like, I did not have an attachment. And I think that is a responsibility for every Bond movie, knowing that you may be getting someone new. I'm not saying you have to dumb anything down, but there has to be a reason I'm rooting for this man. And I didn't see it. So it's a same-day rental. I'm not saying I'm giving up on the Bond series. I'm just saying I'm glad we got through this one.
It could have, like, if it had 3 less locations. Like, there were so many locations and so many modes of transportation in this movie. I'm like, just refine it a little bit. We don't need the pool. We don't need the weird statue graveyard, and we don't need the train. Like, just cut those things out, lessen it a little bit, put that dialogue in other places, and we're good.
I think that what I was missing was either give me more espionage or give me more fun.
Yeah.
I didn't have fun in this. I understand, because this was such a change. This is a big change for them in this movie in particular. You're getting a new James Bond. Like, everything is different. You're trying to step into a new era. So I think it was a little bumpy. So yeah, I needed to be, I just needed more.
Well, we have
not Roger Moore, just more.
We have 3 more movies in our time frame. 3 more Bond movies.
3.
So we have this one, Goldeneye, Tomorrow Never Dies from 1997, The World Is Not Enough in 1999, and Die Another Day in 2002. Michelle Yeoh is Tomorrow Never Dies. That's the next one we have to do.
Oh, I'm up for that one. I can do it.
If you want more fun, there might be some more fun to be had with Pierce Brosnan.
Well, if you want to call into our quick drop and let us know what your favorite James Bond movie is, or favorite James Bond in general, or if you want to sing us a lovely rendition of Stand By Your Man, hit us up 909-601 and MLF, twat us at the Twitters, hem us at the Threads, and you could be featured on a future episode.
Join us next week as we celebrate Pride with Tu Wong Fu with returning guest Zach
and Nick. It's a pleasure as always.
You survived.
I survived, and honestly, I appreciate your kindness. This felt much more collegial than the last ones did. So this was fun. I can't wait to come back. It's gonna be I can't wait to come back. That's gonna be a fun one.
It's gonna be a massacre.
Oh, it is.
Buckle up.
Yeah. So this one was a pleasure. The next one might be my last one. We'll see what happens. It was fun while it lasted.
And as always, be kind and rewind.